Sir Stirling Moss has invited pole position to his house in London. We're going to talk to him about his career in motorsport and the modern day Formula One. Let's ring the buzzer.
Hello?
Oh, hello, we're here to see Sir Stirling Moss, please.
Right, coming right down.
Good morning, come in.
Good morning, Sir Stirling. How do you do? Thank you very much for having us. Thank you. Sir Stirling, first of all, let's have a little chat about your house. Some amazing gadgets. It's filled with mini cars, miniature cars, model cars. Does that reflect Sir Stirling Moss?
Well, yeah, I suppose it has to. I mean, I've got this car here, which I don't know if you can see that, but it's a beautiful model. And that reminds me, I mean, it's a 250F Mazda, which is probably the nicest Formula One car ever, you know, to drive. A really nice car to drive. Beautiful.
So to have little memories all around your house, I suppose.
Oh yeah, I mean, what I'm
keeps the dream
sitting
alive.
in, this is a Charles Eames chair. And I happened to win a championship, God knows when, but a long time ago, and there was a big trophy, and I said, look, would you mind if instead of the trophy, I could have a Charles Eames chair, which was at that time about the same price as a good silver cup. And they said, sure, all right, so I've got my Charles Eames chair.
Perfect, and you get to use it every day. I love that.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, winding the clock right back, how did you get into motorsport? Where did the interest come in for you?
Interest came from my father raced at Brooklands in Indianapolis. He was a dentist. My mother did competition motoring, you know, hill climbing and that sort of stuff. So I was brought up with fast cars, and I went to my father and I said, you know, Dad, I'd like to be a racing driver. And he said, look, I don't like the idea at all, but if you're going to race, you're going to wear a crash hat. And I remember saying to him, Dad, that's a bit sissy. I mean, you know, people like Sommer and Vimil and all these people were wearing those cloth helmets, because that's what all most of them wore. And he said, no, if you're going to wear a helmet. And so I said, all right, well, I'll do that and look a sissy. And that's how it started, really.
And then you managed to persuade him, I suppose, by having some success, and then it all kind of went from there.
Yeah. He gave me, well, I'd been offered a drive with the HWM, which is a English cars racing in Europe. And he said, look, you've got 1 year to prove that you can make a living. He said, I don't think you can. And so I had this year, and luckily I made a living. And obviously then, as I became better known, because I was very young, obviously 17, my start money was quite good, which is start money, each car was given a certain amount of money by the organisers. Doesn't happen now, of course, but they were, and therefore, being with this British team, we're the only English cars out there, green ones, because in those days, of course, the cars had no adverts, so you had to be your national colour, which is green for England and blue for France and so on. Every car is different, but they have similar characteristics. I mean, the thing you have to do is hopefully you have the ability to set the car up as you want it to. In other words, you want understeer or oversteer, depending how you drive the car and so on. So that was you know, fairly easy. If you went up to my car on the start line and let 2 pounds out of the front tyres or the back tyre, I would know if somebody fiddled with it, because I've got the car as near to the way, near to exactly what I want.
Your first win at Aintree, in front of the British home crowd, how important was that to win in front of the home crowd?
Oh, terrific. I mean, it gives you a little bit of extra speed, you know. I don't know what it is or why it is, but if you're really racing, and Aintree this was that, of course, and that's quite a good circuit for the cars that I had, and it worked out very well.
And for the likes of sort of Lewis Hamilton, Jenson Button, can you feel what they must be feeling when they're driving at Silverstone now, and having the home crowd behind them? You can identify what they're going through?
It does mean a tremendous amount, actually. I mean, also, of course, it depends on how enthusiastic the crowds are, and you get really keen people, you know, in England. Well, you do also in South America and so on, but those people are obviously cheering you on, and you know you can see them, and blow kisses to a pretty girl or something like that. You know, I mean, things happened in those days that couldn't now, because the cockpits are like this, and they wouldn't be able to bring their hands out, or they don't bring their hands out. I don't know if they could, but I think that poor old Lewis. I mean, if he wins a race, he has to go off and talk to Vodafone and speak to the sponsors. If I won a race, I'd go and try and chat up the crumpet. You know, so it's a different. It's different to the scene.
I think you had it better, definitely, in your day.
Very much.
At the same year as Aintree, the Mille Miglia. How spectacular was that to race as a driver?
It was the only race of the year I was frightened. I was really frightened of it because I didn't know the circuit. I mean, it's 1,000 miles around. It took 2 days to make one lap in practice. And but once the flag fell, that goes. And then then it was flat out, and I had a guy travelling with me, Jenks, who'd been 3 times world champion in the sidecar, and he was giving me, he had a roller map thing, and he was telling me what was coming up. In other words, if we went up along Brow and through a village, I wouldn't know if it goes right or left, and he would, by the time I arrived, he'd have given me the right signal, and he was like a guide dog. I mean, I just don't know how much longer it would have taken me if I hadn't had him. I mean, he was amazing.
You talk about the fear and not knowing where you were driving and things, but surely the fear in Formula One was equally as high and scary.
Well, the thing about the sports car, of course, I mean, we were doing speeds that they don't often reach in Formula One, or didn't they, about 185 miles an hour, which, that many years ago was pretty quick. And of course the brakes, we hadn't got disc brakes, we'd still got drums, because the only people who had discs were obviously a Dunlop one on English cars, so they wouldn't give it to a German team. But the cars they gave you so much feedback. I mean, really, I can tell you in an SLR, which is the car I used in the Mille Miglia, it was absolutely the most stunning car ever built. I mean, I did 1,000 miles, and the last session was from Cremona to Brescia, and managed to average 169.1 miles an hour, standing start. So you could see the car was exactly as good as when it started. Amazing.
Unbelievable. One of the races that stands out, and I think stands out in terms of all Formula One races, is Monaco 1961.
Oh, yeah.
How do you remember that? People think that is one of the greatest ever F1 races.
I remember it pretty well, I'll tell you that. Because the difference between myself and the Ferraris was maximum 3 seconds. And of course at Monaco particularly, where there are a lot of hairpins, every time I come into a hairpin I could see the Ferrari there. I sort of wave like this, hoping, I thought, well, you make them feel that I've got more in hand, and so I'm just blowing them kisses and all that. So it's a wonderful circuit because it's right in the town. It is a real road, and I'm really a road racer, not a track racer, and that one epitomises the best that you can get.
You're well known for your wave, the overtaking wave. Well,
sometimes I shook my fist. If he'd done a bad thing, either thank you very much or
I'll get you afterwards.
Yes, exactly.
And you raced with some of the more legends like yourself, Fangio, Farina.
Oh, yeah.
What made Fangio so special, do you think?
Just his balance, his care. I think he was very easy on the car. Extraordinary, because he didn't like sports cars. I remember saying to him once, why don't you like sports cars? And he said to me, I like to see the wheels. Well, quite honestly, you don't look here. If you're going at 170 miles an hour, you're looking up the road. And I could never understand that. But he didn't. He didn't like, if the wheels were covered in, Fangio was not nearly as good as he was when they were open.
How bizarre, how bizarre.
It's
and you mentioned South America earlier. When you raced there with Fangio, did you see the way the crowds reacted to him and his...
Oh, tremendous. I mean, the amount of people there, and of course Fangio was quite correctly a national hero and a very nice man. I mean, I couldn't speak to him much because he spoke Spanish and I spoke English. But as we were talking about cars or crumpet, it didn't matter too much, But no, he was a lovely person.
A common language between you there.
Exactly.
And Farina, did you watch his driving style was something else?
Dirty is the only way to say. He actually has caused people to crash. And I remember once in my very early days, and we were at a track, and he was in a 1.5 litre supercharged, and I was in a much smaller car, and he caught me up, and was lapping me, and he would come into a corner, and he damn well sort of forced me over to the wrong place, just to get me out of the way. And the funny thing was, he overdid it and nearly lost it on the way out. And Fangio came past laughing his head off because they were together, travelling 1-2.
Passing you both.
Yes.
In terms of the relationship between the drivers, the respect you must have had with the lack of safety, shall we say, perhaps.
Yeah.
Do you think that's reflected in today's Formula One? Do you think there's the same respect between you?
I think there must be. Yeah. But the point is, it's a totally different situation now. Then it was a sport. Now, of course, it's a business. It's a very, very well-run business. I mean, once we had television and money came in, and the cars had adverts on them, that took away the sport and made it business.
In 1962, a very terrible crash for you. Was there ever a moment when you retired that you considered not retiring? Was there a chance that you would have kept going?
Oh, well, I mean, if I hadn't had that crash, I would have gone on. I reckon I'd gone until I was 50 or 60. I mean, Fangio won the title when he's 54, and that was with 3-hour races. You know, I mean, if it's your life, I mean, we're very, very fit. Drivers are very fit, and it's a wonderful life. I mean, going around all around the world and meeting people and travelling. I just can't think of any other business or sport that one could do with equal motor racing.
Did you, when you came out of the coma and sort of realised the situation, was there a moment where you had another go at driving? Did you?
There was, because the press kept on at me. Are you going to are you going to race again? And then, in my opinion, I stupidly went down far too early. I think I should have waited another year. But I went to Goodwood, tried myself out. My times were okay, but the problem was I had to concentrate much more than I did before, because when you're racing all the time, you do things automatically. You know, like if I take a swing at you, you're going to duck. Well, that sort of thing had gone, and so I had to say, right, start on the outside here, clip the inside, and because my concentration hadn't come back well enough for me to go into it. So it was a mistake, really.
With that in mind, when you saw Niki Lauda, for example, going back in so quickly in the same championship year after such a catastrophic crash, did you think, my goodness, this is foolish of him, he can't possibly go back to where he was? Or how he was?
No, I must say I felt, well, you know, if you're a racing driver, you want to get in there and get on with it. And I think it's very important to go back and not think the wrong, you know, the downside of racing. One's got to look at the upside, the fun, the pleasure and the exhilaration of competition.
And when you finally decided that retirement was what was going to have to happen, were there any regrets, any races that you had your heart set on doing and taking part in?
Many. I mean, here I was only 32 and I had to work for a living. I mean, it killed me. And, you know, I'd be going around the world having fun, and then suddenly, my gosh, it all stops. So it was awful. I mean, I tried to find, you know, what could I do? I've got no experience in anything. I mean, all I was an ex-racing driver, and you can't sell that, you know, unless you go to races. So I had to think, well, what am I going to do? And really, I was a bit of an amateur at what I did. I mean, I went for a certain time. Of course, I could make a living by going around opening garages and all that sort of stuff. You know, you get 50 quid here, 50 quid there, that sort of thing. But it's not really a very good living, is it?
So you've worked for the rest of your life. I don't think it's everybody knows you, so you're having a good career, I think, after that.
Lovely time.
If we look at Formula One today, especially 2014, with the new technical regulations coming in, they're playing around with the sport, tinkering it here, tinkering it there. Do you think it's heading in the right direction, and is it sustainable with what they're doing?
Well, they do that. I mean, this always happens. You know, they change the size of the formula, so you have to do this and I mean, in my mind, last year was very, very good, and they've changed a lot of things. Well, we won't really know how good or damaging these things are until we see them racing, actually. So we'll know fairly soon, because we've got the Grand Prix coming up. But it's one of the things they always did. I mean, you get really good thing going, and then they suddenly say, right, that's enough, no more fun, sort this out.
Yeah. With new rules such as the fuel economy and that side of things, the tyre management we saw last year, that sort of stops the racing, as it were. The technology advances perhaps take it on a step with the likes of DRS and KERS.
KERS, fantastic.
Do you see the sort of the lack of racing with the fuel and the tyre management a problem, or do you try and embrace the technology side?
I think it probably is a very good challenge, actually. I mean, I think the KERS business is fantastic, you know, because I think KERS are going to be on every car in the world soon, because it's so cheap. And you gain so much, and I think motor racing, one of its important things is to test everything out to the limit. I mean, disc brakes. I was racing disc brakes long before they became available on cars, because we had many problems. I mean, problems that would have killed people. You know, when the pedal would go right to the floor and so on. And so therefore, motor racing was in its creativity. It helped, I think, improve the cars.
You mentioned KERS. Which out of all the technical extra specifications that the Formula One cars have now would you have liked to have had in your car when you were racing in the 50s?
Gosh, I think from my point of view, the thing I'd like to have had more than anything was slightly stronger cars, because we hadn't got the metals and carbon fibre and so on that they have now. Therefore, I mean, I've had in my lifetime, I think 6 wheels come off, twice the steering shear. Once I was on the banking at Monza, and I'm fighting it down because 175 miles an hour. My arms crossed. I'm not stupid. I knew something was wrong. And I hit the arm co and bent it and everything else. So I think just the safety would have been really great, because it would have saved me so many accidents.
And if we look sort of 40, 50 years ahead from where we are now, do you think people will look back at 2013, 2014 and have the same nostalgia that we have for the cars that you were racing in the 50s?
I hope so. I hope so. I don't think the drivers today get nearly as much pleasure out of what they're doing. I think they enjoy it, and it's good living and so on, and it helps one's ego and all that sort of stuff. But I don't think they had quite the same passion as we did, 50 years ago.
It was a bit more raw back in the day when you were racing.
Yes, it was.
Who do you think then, out of the F1 drivers, would have done the best in the 50s? Who do you think would have adapted to that style and has that raw spirit?
Oh, if you're talking about the top drivers, Alonso and Vettel and so on, these guys would have adapted to anything. I mean, and Lewis, of course. I mean, the fact that they're driving today's car is only a relevance of what date we're at. I mean, if a person is a racing driver, and he will be able to accommodate all the problems that come in and out, and so I don't think it really makes any difference.
And when you look at the grid today, they're all testing in Bahrain. Who reminds you of yourself when you were driving in the 50s? Is there anyone that you sort of think, oh, that's what I was like?
Well, I'm a great fan of Vettel, so obviously I'd say Vettel, because I think he's a racer. One would say, well, everybody's a racer, yeah, but there's a difference in how you do it. And he certainly, I think, would be my choice. There's
been a lot of controversy over Vettel, perhaps making the sport more boring. Do you think that is true? Do you think there's any truth behind it?
It's unfortunate if it being so good makes it boring. I mean, I find that absolutely stupid. Because if you watch a man at doing his artwork, which is driving, to see what line he takes, whether he's exactly in the same place every time. Normally, if you're absolutely on the limit, you have to go in the same place, because that's the only way you can get around the circuit. But people, depending on their ability and the amount of driving they've done and so on, you can pick them out reasonably well.
I was a little bit nervous coming to interview today, Sir Stirling, because of being a girl, because we've been a little bit outspoken on women in Formula One.
Yes.
With the news that Sauber now have a woman driver, a female driver,
yes.
Do you think, and alongside Susie Wolff, of course, at Williams, do you think it's going to change? Do you think we will see it? Simona has plans of racing in 2015 with Sauber. Do you think it's going to happen that fast? Do you think it ever can happen? Do you think?
I hate to say it because it sounds very chauvinistic, but I just don't think that ladies, in the way we're not equipped to have babies, and I think ladies aren't really equipped quite for the pressure of Formula One. I mean, some of them are really tremendous drivers. I mean, they really are. I mean, my sister was very good, and all sorts of people, and they can be certainly good enough to drive and enter. I don't think, though, that they are likely to win, quite honestly.
I definitely won't win, so I don't think I'll even be applying. And so if you were 16 again and you were trying to convince your father to go into F1, do you think you would be wanting to go into F1 if you were entering in 2014?
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
it's still appealing.
I mean, it's the biggest challenge. But I was very lucky because I was doing 50 races a year, because I had sports cars, you see, and nowadays Formula One drivers don't do sports car racing much. And so I do sports cars and trials and rallies, the whole lot. So I'd really got as much as I could out of motor racing.
You mentioned that with the drivers not doing sports cars, if they're in Formula One, that's really where they are. Do you think that would be something that would sort of increase the excitement across all the different categories and championships for them to do a little bit of this and a little bit of that?
I think it'd be a good thing. You see, I'm sure the guys in the saloons, say racing saloons or sports cars, would like to see how the Formula One stars would stack up against them, how much they were behind them, or could you beat this guy, you know? And I think it'd be very, very interesting for the drivers and also for spectators, really.
You spoke a lot about Vettel. Obviously, he's going for his 5th World Championship. Do you think he can do it again? Who would you put your money on if you're a betting man this year to win the drivers and the constructors?
Vettel, because he's also got Adrian Newey, who designed the car, and Adrian, I can tell you, he designs winning cars, as you know. He is right out of the box like that. I mean, if they have a pace car out, and then the pace car pulls in, straight away there's Vettel. Mm. I mean, he is, in my mind, he's a very complete racer, actually.
Do you see him breaking the records, doing more than 7 like Michael Schumacher? Yes.
Oh yeah. I mean, Michael did a tremendous job, but I don't think he'd even claim to be the equal of Vettel. I really don't.
And if we look back across the history of F1, if you could choose anybody, and it doesn't have to be from your era of driving, to race against one last time, if you had one more race, who would you want to be on that grid with you?
Nuvolari. Because I think Nuvolari was an amazing man. Amazing.
Lovely. So Stirling Moss, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very much enjoyed being in your lovely house and hearing all about your story.
Ferrari, the cars that make Formula One sing.